But just at the last minute, this deer comes out, a great buck, a shooter buck, one that you would shoot on the first day or the last day. All of a sudden, I don't know if he winded us, but he took off running and bolted. And sometimes you can grunt or woof or something and get a deer to stop, or sometimes it makes him run faster. And so this little kid, he does that. He says, "Arr!" And I had my sights ready, and the buck stopped broadside, and he looked, and I shot and dropped him. And it was like, the little boy was so happy.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, episode number 213. Mia Anstine, the Horseback Hunt for Colorado Muleys. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, the Horny Buck Seed Company, Covert Scouting Cameras, and Marsh's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is Adam Hayes from Team 200 and themoonguide.com, and you're about to push play on one of my favorite podcasts, Big Buck Registry.
Hey everyone, it's Eva Shockey. You're about to listen to another great episode of Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Casey Kiefer and Chris Kiefer from Dropped and Rival Wild, and you're about to get into some exciting action.
You're about to press play on Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Welcome, fellow predators and carnivores. My name is Jay, and for Jim Keller and Dusty Phillips, welcome to another episode of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. If you're interested in this podcast or other podcasts, we could really use your help. If you're an iPhone user and you're a podcast listener and you're a deer hunter and you like this show, if you would, even if you don't use the podcast app, but you use something else like Stitcher or Blueberry or TuneIn, or you go to YouTube and watch our shows over there, would you please do something for us? Go to the podcast app and do a search for Big Buck Registry, and then hit subscribe once it comes up. And I understand iTunes does not make this easy, but leave us a review about this show. If you're a first-time user or a long-time user and you haven't done it yet, please go over there, give us a review, hopefully a 5-star. But if it's not, that's okay. We need the feedback, and it certainly helps our visibility in the iTunes charts if you do that. So if you could, please support this show by doing that. That'd be greatly appreciated. Speaking of listening to podcasts and listening to hunting podcasts, you may want to go check out our project that we have going on with the National Wild Turkey Federation. The media company behind this show, BOSPN Media, is actually producing the official podcast of the National Wild Turkey Federation called The Strut Zone, All Access. It's hosted by Fred Bird, who is a regional director, and there are about, 11 shows out now, and most recently, there was an interview done with Steve Ranella. So you may want to go check that out. It's in iTunes. It's on the podcast app. And all you have to do is type in Strut Zone. We're also running the harness program. There are 3 ways to help out in the harness program. Number 1, if you need a harness, shoot us an email. Number 2, if you have harnesses to donate, shoot us an email. Or number 3, if you don't need a harness and you don't have a harness to donate, but you want to participate in this cause where we put harnesses in the hands of the hunters that need them, you can go to bigbuckregistry.com/harness and you can donate. A little bit goes a long way. And the reason we're raising money is that we need a budget to mail these things out as they arrive. So if you could, again, bigbuckregistry.com/harness, and you can support that cause by visiting that website and donating whatever you feel you can. This week's guest is Mia Anstine. Mia recently found herself on the cover of Field and Stream magazine, and rightfully so. Mia is an outdoor writer, podcaster, and hunting guide in Colorado. You'll hear Mia's positivity as we discuss the numerous species and hunting opportunities that Colorado has to offer. Mia loves getting in shape both mentally and physically in preparation for her guided horseback mule deer hunts, and explains why waiting patiently for the right shot will pay huge dividends. She loves the variety of game found in her home state and enjoys intense temperature and weather swings that often appear during hunting season. Mia shares with us how to prepare for all the fun that comes with hunting the big country. Before we turn to our interview with Mia Anstine, let's turn to Jim Keller with the Deer News.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week. National Shooting Sports Foundation praises North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper's signing Sunday hunting expansion bill. This story was originally featured on the National Shooting Sports Foundation website. The National Shooting Sports Foundation, or the NSSF, the trade association for the firearms, ammunition, hunting, and shooting sports industry, is praising North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper for his signing today of the bipartisan Sunday hunting expansion legislation. The legislation, HB 559, Outdoor Heritage Enhanced, improves upon the Outdoor Heritage Act passed in 2015 and creates additional opportunities for North Carolina sportsmen and sportswomen. With Governor Cooper's signature, additional barriers to Sunday hunting will be lifted by allowing the State Wildlife Resource Commission to create a process which could open more than 2 million acres of public land for Sunday hunting. Outdoor Heritage Enhanced also removes prohibitions on hunting within 500 yards of a residence, allows the Wildlife Resource Commission to conduct a comprehensive study and formulate rules allowing migratory bird hunting on Sunday, removes the blanket prohibition of hunting within counties having a population greater than 700,000 people, and requires any county wishing to opt out of Sunday hunting to do so by a county-wide voter referendum. The legislation gained the support of Richard Childress, a North Carolina native and lifelong hunter. Efforts to create additional hunting opportunities were the focus of the North Carolina Sunday Hunting Coalition, including NSSF, the National Rifle Association, the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, Delta Waterfowl, and Safari Club International. The coalition worked closely with state legislatures and the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission to achieve these legislative milestones on behalf of North Carolina sportsmen and sportswomen. Wild game processors now need free permit from DNR. This story was originally featured on the UP Matters website. At its June meeting, the Michigan Natural Resources Commission signed an order requiring anyone who receives compensation for processing wild game to be registered with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. The new requirement was brought forward as part of a larger set of deer management regulations related to hunting licenses, chronic wasting disease response measures, urban conflict, and other issues. The commercial game processor registration requirement is effective immediately. This free permit is to determine how many game processors are in the state of Michigan and where they are located, said Casey Wrights, DNR Wildlife Permit Specialist. As we work to manage the white-tailed deer diseases in Michigan, we need to be able to contact processors who might be able to assist us in processing donated deer, she said. In addition, we would like to provide this information to hunters so they can have their deer processed relatively close to home. Right now, we do not have those capabilities. If you receive compensation for processing game, you are now required to be registered with the DNR. It is a quick and easy process for filling out an online form and then printing off your permit. Commercial wild game processors should register immediately so they are legal for the fall hunting season. The form to register is located on www.michigan.gov/wildlife permits, and anyone who is unable to fill out the online form should call 517-284-9453 for assistance. Wild game processors who have questions related to being licensed for food safety requirements can visit www.michigan.gov/meat processing or call 800-292-3939. Arizona man picked up newborn fawn, took it to local bar. This story was originally featured on the Fox News website and was reported by Travis Fezjun. An Arizona man got a little too close to nature during the weekend after officials said he found a newborn fawn Saturday and brought it along to a local bar to show his friends. The Arizona Game and Fish Department said in a news release that a little baby deer was born late last week, but his life changed forever when a stranger thought he was doing the right thing. The unknown man stopped off at a local bar to show the fawn off and see if anyone wanted to take it home before the agency was contacted. The newborn can no longer live life in the wild, officials said. Officials say the fawn needs constant care now in order to survive, with feedings every 3 to 4 hours. The department will keep the fawn for a few days to ensure it is healthy and feeding well, then it will ultimately be transferred to a wildlife sanctuary in Arizona. Mike Demlong, AZGFD Wildlife Education Program Manager, told the Arizona Republic nobody at the bar knew the man who brought in the baby deer, so they won't be pursuing an investigation. Special thanks to Daniel Applebaum for bringing this story to our attention. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller with the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Mia Anstine. Mia Anstine, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're psyched to speak with you, and you're coming in high demand. So thanks for taking the time to sit down and chat with us. We get to learn all about you, so we're very excited.
Cool.
Where are you living right now?
I actually live in Southwest Colorado. I live near Durango, which is a lot of people, they say, oh, I have a friend in Denver, but actually I'm 3 hours from Albuquerque and I'm over 6 hours from Denver. So from my front porch, I look at New Mexico. So I'm pretty close to New Mexico down here, but in the beautiful state of Colorado.
Gotcha. Okay. And I was one of those people that said I have a friend that lives in Denver. However, we spent a lot of time on the road going to many corners of Colorado, and that's why I came pretty close to where you are, thereabouts.
Yeah.
Yep. So I've got to see, and it was amazing how diverse Colorado really is. If you go south, it's like it's one climate. You go north, it's another climate, and it's completely. It's a big state, but there was a whole different dynamic in the landscape, from what I remember anyway. From the top of Colorado to the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, you saying that, I've got a friend that's going to come out and elk hunt this September with me. And I was explaining to her that we'll kind of work our way up in elevation depending on how conditioned she is when she gets here.
Right.
And, so we might be hunting some like plains and sagebrush, or we might end up in the foothills, or we might end up at the top of the snow-capped peaks and stuff like that. So there really is like throughout the state, but also just in our little area here in one hunting unit, there's a lot of different climate zones.
Yeah, there really is. It's amazing. Have you had friends come out to try to hunt and keep up with you out there and stay on the elevation? To me, I had a friend that was hunting in Colorado, and we hiked the biggest mountain that we could find every Friday on the steep side just to get in shape. I wasn't hunting, but he was, and I was encouraging him, and just so he could be in shape just to go hunting. I mean, if you think about it, there's some pretty rugged terrain you have to cover. Do you get people to get gassed out pretty quickly when they get there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And like her, she's living at 300 feet, and then she'll come here. Where I actually live is just under 7,000 feet. But if we go hunt at 9, 10, or 12,000 feet, that coming from basically sea level, even if you're in shape and train, your body isn't used to not having that oxygen, so you kind of have to acclimate. I actually guide hunting trips also, and we have hunters that will come a week or even 2 weeks before season so that their bodies can get acclimated and they're not getting, altitude sickness and getting dizzy while they're hunting. And that's really ideally, if you can do that, it's great. But a lot of people, of course, when you work, you can't get that much time off. So it's like get in shape, and hopefully you can get here a couple days early so we can kind of start moving up. And the good thing is, as I said, there's places to hunt down low. There's places to hunt high. Your chances vary depending on what time of year you come.
Right. What kind of exercise do you recommend, and how far out should somebody who lives at altitude of 300 start to train?
Well, I mean, I always tell people, ideally, you should train year round. You should always be in shape just for general health and fitness. It's better for your stress. It reduces that. It's better for your health. But if somebody doesn't work out regularly, if they could start, the beginning of the summer and then work into hunting season, that would be great. I really don't suggest, I'm going to hunt next month, so I'm just going to start now. And it's going to help you, but you really need to be conditioned and fit before you actually head out to run up and down mountains.
That's a very good point. Excellent. So growing up, did you call Colorado home then too, or did you come in from somewhere else?
Yeah, actually, I have a really diverse history of growing up. My parents moved me to Colorado when I was 2 years old, and we lived south of Pagosa Springs on a little homestead. And I lived in that area. Pagosa at the time was a very small town, and it's grown a little over the years. Now I think the whole county has a population of 14,000 people, so it's still relatively small. But we lived 14 miles down a dirt road, and that's where I grew up. I grew up alongside a river, and I fished in front, and I hiked the mountains in the back from the time I was a little kid until I was a teenager. And as a teenager, my parents divorced, and most of my family is from San Diego. My mom and I moved to San Diego, and that's kind of where I developed a real passion for the outdoors, because I, before that, didn't realize what I had. And I moved there, and the friends I made and stuff, I was, always teased, oh, country girl. And I really was. I was from the country, and, I fit in the city, but they didn't know about hunting or fishing. They didn't know about eating wild game. And it really has just become my goal to share that with other people and let them know that they can get outside, even if they don't want to hunt or fish or, shoot guns, they can still get outside and see wild animals and stuff like that. So living in the city actually kind of helped me develop who I am today.
Okay. So
that transition did.
You got to spend some time in the country, but also in the city growing up. The land, the way you just described, where you could walk out your front porch, or I don't know if it was a porch, so you didn't tell me if there was a porch, but if you walked out your front door and you could go fishing, which I assume you're fishing for some amazing trout of some sort, and then go hiking.
I always wanted trout, but it seemed like inevitably I'd catch suckerfish as a kid, and I'd bring them home, and my mom was like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to cook this for this kid." So she quickly taught me catch and release.
Gotcha. All right, that's funny. Yeah, the suckerfish, they'd never really wrapped my head around that fish, but you're right. But you got to explore the backyard, which was mountainous. It sounds like.
Yes. And where we lived, as I said, we're right on the border of New Mexico. And where we lived south of Pagosa, we actually would get some of those Jicarilla bucks would come up in our area. And so they went during their migration, they come back and forth. And back in the day, my dad, he actually came to Pagosa because of my great-grandfather. And my great-grandfather, when he came to Pagosa, he used to hunt near Chimney Rock, which is now Southern Ute land, where there are some forest areas you can hunt. But he would hunt near Chimney Rock and get these massive bucks. I mean, huge deer. And way back then, they didn't save antlers. I have a couple of photos of my great-grandfather with the deer, and my great-grandmother used to come with him and hunt. So that's how my dad ended up here. But as a kid, I really didn't realize, I'd see these bucks coming through, and me and my dog, we'd head out in the hills, and you'd see these deer, and they were beautiful. I mean, I always loved them, but it was so cool to see those deer. And then now today, you don't see them as often, but when you do, they're just amazing. There's some really big mule deer that come through.
That's awesome. What a great place to grow up partially, to just have a great young, youthful experience about the great outdoors. So you moved to the city, and what happened in the city? Were you craving the country life?
Well, as a teenager, so first I was boy crazy. So in high school, like always chasing boys, I guess, early in high school. And then in college, I really tried to focus on studies, couldn't decide what I wanted to do, changed my major several times. And then eventually was trying to decide where I wanted to be. Did I want to come back to the country? Did I want to go somewhere else? I moved to Texas. I lived in Seguin, Texas for one summer, and that was a pretty cool place. I moved to Oregon, and I lived in McMinnville up there. That was kind of closer to the coast. I really didn't like it there because it rained and rained and rained. I found it really depressing. I didn't get out much because it was always wet, and I really liked to be outdoors. So it really didn't appeal to me. And my dad said, hey, these people are looking to hire somebody. Do you want to come back down here? So I ended up back in Southwest Colorado, and I've been here pretty much ever since. And so there was kind of an evolution of me trying to figure out where I wanted to be, where's a great place, and ended up right back here in the country in Colorado. Gotcha.
Well, the full circle, in other words.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So living in Colorado today, what is what game are you typically going after during the hunting seasons?
Wow. See, in Colorado, as far as guiding or me, myself, what do I pursue?
Personally, yeah. What do you personally pursue?
personally, I pursue whatever is in season. And I'm on the Colorado Sportsman's Roundtable, and I'm a hunter ed assistant instructor. And what I tell people is I have always bought every hunting license that I can. I apply for everything also, but I've always purchased everything I can because the funds go back to wildlife. It goes to conservation. And even if I'm not going to get a chance to hunt the animal, I'll still buy the license just in case.
Right.
Because it's really terrible to be out fishing, or even here on our ranch fixing fence, and you see something, I don't have a license, I can't shoot that. So I've always, got all my hunting tags ready, but I guide for Miriam's turkey, black bear, elk, and mule deer. And then myself, I've been applying for moose, mountain goat, and bighorn sheep. I haven't drawn those myself yet, but I've been on a couple hunts, and I tell you what, the moose hunt was just amazing. It was quite a bit different than elk or deer. And that was my husband hunt, and it was really interesting because he shot high, and that moose, although he hit it, normally you would think a deer or an elk, especially a deer, they're gone, and you've got to go track them and find them. Well, that moose, it didn't run. It spun around. You could see it coming, and it was charging back towards us.
Really?
And and one of our friends was with us, and he was like, wait till you see the whites of his eyes. Wait till you see, because, a running animal is pretty hard to shoot. So he waited, took his second shot, and dropped the moose. But that was pretty interesting to have. I've had rutting bulls charging at me, but that moose they're quite a bit bigger than a bull elk. So that was a lot of fun.
Right. It's funny how they came up with the red coat reference there. Wait till you see the whites of their eyes. What is that all about?
I don't know. I'll have to ask him someday. He's quite a character. If you meet some different guides in Colorado, some of them are real quiet, and then some of them have a lot of stories to tell. And he's one of those that just tells a ton of stories, and he's always got some kind of saying for everything that he does. So he must have maybe watched the movie before he went on the hunt.
Yes,
I don't know.
Yeah. It's really fun.
So, yeah. So that was really fun.
Okay.
Other hunts, I hunt waterfowl, I hunt pheasants, quail when we can find it. Antelope is coming up in about 20 days, I believe.
Right.
So I'll be hunting antelope really soon, and then after antelope we go elk and bear, and then I didn't draw my deer tag this year, and I almost draw my deer tag every year. So I'm a little disappointed in that, but I'm going to be taking a couple of new hunters, so I'll live vicariously through them on that hunt.
It's interesting that you have to draw a tag for deer still.
Yeah.
You'd think that would be like over-the-counter kind of stuff.
Yeah, in our area, you have to draw for deer, especially elk. There are seasons that you can just buy over-the-counter, but not for deer.
That's crazy. It's hard to wrap my head around that concept where you can get a tag for an elk any old day, but the deer are hard to come by. That's funny.
Yeah, you've got to manage the populations, so
sure.
That's all part of it. I actually have a roundtable meeting coming up and with wildlife officials, and a big topic this year is the chronic wasting disease. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been found in our area, but a little further north and northeast, they've been seeing it. So I'll have to learn a little more about that in our state. I've heard of it in other states, but I don't know exactly what impact that is going to have here.
Gotcha. Okay. One of the questions I meant to ask you a little earlier is, do you remember the first gun you ever shot?
Yeah. My dad actually taught me how to shoot when I was 5 years old. And he did that because I had an older brother and he was buying my brother a gun. So he didn't want me to be curious and think that my brother's gun was a toy. I actually shared a picture on social media a while back of me with my little silver 6-shooters. I loved guns when I was a kid. And my dad wanted us to know what firearms were, how to be safe with them. So my first gun that I shot, he had us shoot a BB gun first. But then he had us shoot a .22 revolver and then his .22 rifle. And then he had a 30-06 rifle. And he had me shoot that as well, just to get the feel of the difference in caliber. So Those I shot when I was 5 years old.
Oh, wow. Very cool. It's amazing how much we remember about the first gun we ever shot. I can certainly tell you about mine. It's sentimental in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. What was yours?
Mine was it was a semi-automatic 22 that my dad had, and he got that from his grandfather. And it was the coolest thing because it had a clip, and it's almost like the 1022s, but it was It was old and really had a nice walnut stalk on it. Mm-hmm. And I think it was manufactured in the 30s, thereabouts.
Oh, wow.
And he still has it today. But that became the woodchuck gun.
That's cool.
I spent many a night sleeping on the porch, spotting for woodchuck in the garden as we were growing up.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a great gun. We took it everywhere. And it had the coolest part about it, besides having a clip, was that it had a fold down stock in the front. So it almost became like a Tommy gun, even though it wasn't.
Oh.
So you could keep pulling the trigger and it would just keep firing. But it was neat because you had that little handle in the front. I don't see those anymore.
Yeah, you don't see those very often.
Yeah, really cool gun. Some fond memories of many days of target practicing with my father.
Yeah, we were always shooting tin cans and stuff like that. Is that what you guys did?
Yeah, tin cans, find a tree to shoot into. Sometimes during the season, we'd actually bump into some game and we'd shoot long range trying to hit the rabbit.
Yeah.
Never did, but it was fun just to see how far out we could shoot and see what we could hit.
Yeah, very cool.
Yep, very, very good. So let's talk about some deer hunting. So you didn't pull a tag this year, but it sounds like you've got some experience deer hunting where you are.
Oh, yeah. Mule deer are just great. I love hunting mule deer. I would have to say last year's hunt is one of my most memorable deer hunts because I really had a really crazy year last year. I traveled a ton. I don't know if you knew, but I was on the cover of Field and Stream. And with that cover, I was like so prepared for anti-hunters to attack me. But I actually had people in the industry that were more demeaning or discouraging to me than anyone else. And it really, I'm a pretty strong person, I like to say, but that really caught me off guard. It really took me aback, and I had a rough hunting season. So I don't know if it was the stress or what was going on, but I felt pressure. And I'm an outdoor writer. I write for several publications. And so there's always the pressure to get photos for stories. There's the pressure of, completing a story. I actually went to Russia with Beretta and Sako rifles, and we were bear hunting, and I didn't get a bear because I didn't know we were supposed to shoot in the dark. I've never shot in the dark, and I didn't know that's what they did. So I missed a chance at a bear. So I was really disappointed at that. And, like these different things that were happening. I missed an antelope, so 2 in a row I missed. And I didn't shoot at the bear, but at the antelope I did, and I missed him. And I was just like, whoa, what's going on with me? So my self-esteem was really low, and I was kind of discouraged with myself. And as a hunting guide, this is what I do is I encourage other people, I lift them up. Right. And my daughter came with me on my deer hunt. She's 18, and she was the one, I had a deer in my sights. It was a velvet buck, and I guess they call them nut bucks is what they call him, but he's still in velvet in November. And I was like, I haven't shot one yet. I think I want to get him. And I just had him in my sights. I was like, no, I can't shoot. And she's like, Mom, what's the deal? You have a good rest. You're set up. Everything was perfect. What's going on? You let him walk. I was like, I wasn't comfortable with the shot, which I always tell people, if you're not comfortable, don't take the shot. And, we kept having these scenarios. And finally she sat down and she's like, Mom, you're better than this. You know what you're doing. And she just built me up, and she's like, let's go find a buck. And then we found this non-typical buck, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get him. And we hunted him for several days. And finally, it was like she was that voice in the back of my head, which she's becoming a guide as well. And it was really cool to see that full circle turn of events where she was in my ear telling me, okay, relax, wait till he stands up. Okay, breathe. Okay, right. She was walking me through the shot like I had done for her years ago, and like what I do for other hunters, and of course I made a great shot, dropped the buck, and it was, picture perfect hunt, just like it should be. So really that hunt was so memorable, not just because of the deer we saw, but because she got me through that discouraging part of my year. And then I was like, okay, we're good. I can still hunt. I can still do this. It's okay. So
wow. Okay. That's so cool.
That might be a different deer hunting story than you usually hear, but it was more of that was in my head. I had to get out of my head to get back out and hunt.
Right. Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Again, another full circle where somebody you helped turned around and helped you, and to be your daughter to boot. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very special. So when you're guiding. So see, I'm calling in, or we're talking from the East Coast to the West Coast. So this is an East Coast, West Coast kind of thing. And
and you'll have to give me some whitetail hunting tips, like in another day or something.
Definitely. We could talk about that down the road. The whitetail thing, and I'm talking about northeastern whitetails. That's a very different style of hunting than anything I've seen anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about if we just lay down the pictures for people who haven't actually done this. How do you start going on a mule deer hunt? I have no idea. I've never done it. I've talked to people who have, but as a guide and with that kind of insight and somebody that hunts them, where do you start?
Yeah. And, I didn't mention this, but I'm actually writing a book about this. I'm writing a book about how to get started big game hunting, and it's really directed to somebody who hasn't done it out west, and it's focused for the West. And it really depends whether you want to go with a guide or if you want to do it yourself. And I know the big push right now is for do it yourself. The only reason I would recommend a guide is if you don't have time to go and scout and learn the area on your own.
Right. Because
it really, for deer, it really takes somebody referencing the areas. You can actually, in Colorado, you can pull up the harvest statistics, and you can learn what units have more deer harvest. And if you maybe want to go to that area, the thing is with some of those areas, you don't know what caliber of bucks are there. And so if you're just getting started, the caliber of deer may not be important as far as, there's going to be mature deer that maybe aren't going to have mass. They're not going to score as high. But if you're looking for something that's going to score high, you're going to have to do even more research and maybe contact the Colorado Parks and Wildlife officials and get in touch with some of the officers in the area so that you can learn what kind of deer are being taken in that area. And that's something, if you've already hunted, then maybe you're wanting to look for something that is going to score really well.
Okay.
So the research part is a lot. Whereas if you can get in touch with outfitters, they can tell you what caliber of deer are in the area and send you pictures where if it's somebody who doesn't know scores, they can look at the picture and see, okay, yeah, that's what I would like is something around that size. And then an outfitter will scout for you. They'll kind of get you in an area where you have a better chance, ideally. I mean, there are outfitters who I know are shady, but ideally a good outfitter is going to get you on an animal because they want you as a good reference and they want you to maybe come back or send your friends and so forth.
Right.
But if you're doing it on your own and you have to do all that research, you're going to want to take a vacation early in the summer or midsummer and go scout the area that you're planning to go to. And if you can go scout that ahead of time, you'll get to see the deer that are coming in that area. If you have friends, you could ask them who have hunted. And that's a big thing on social media. There are groups, the Mule Deer Hunter and other groups on social media where you can see pictures and you can also ask them questions. And a lot of those people in the mule deer hunting groups, that's their passion, is hunting mule deer. So they're going to help you. They want to help. And that's a great resource. So if somebody doesn't have any idea, they can start there as well. Okay. And then once you've scouted an area, you're going to be looking for tracks, obviously deer and sign like that. When you come to hunt, you as far as tracking the deer and so forth, you need to learn what a buck track is versus if you're hunting timberline bucks, you've also got bighorn sheep to deal with. So you need to learn the difference between a bighorn sheep track and a buck track.
Okay.
A mule deer buck is different than an elk. I mean, you can kind of discern those pretty easily.
Right.
But so that's something else. If you're not hunting timberline, you don't have to worry as much about something like that. But that's something I've had friends go, oh, wow, this is deer. And no, it's not deer. It's bighorn sheep. So you need to learn the areas also as far as what animals besides the one you're hunting are in the area.
Right. Interesting. It's a dynamic that I just don't think about that kind of stuff because there are very few hooven animals in my area. If you see a hoof, it's a deer. There's no really other species that it will be. Out there, you've got several, some of which could be mistaken, really.
Yeah.
We have moose here, but they're so few and far between. There's a huge difference between a baby moose track and a giant buck track. You can just not even close. But that's it. That's those. That's the only way that you could potentially get confused, but probably not. But you've got a bunch of different creatures running around, right? You've got
And in Hunter Ed, we tell people and we give them wildlife guides, and we're like, you really need to study and learn. And anytime you're shooting at all, even if it's just at the range, you always have to be aware of your target and what's beyond. But every year, it seems, somebody shoots a moose mistaking it for an elk. And I haven't heard of yet, because most people who hunt timberline bucks, they're really experienced hunters. And I have never heard of somebody shooting a bighorn sheep. They have different bodies and obviously, look different. But you really have to pay attention, and you don't want to be up there tracking something just to know that it's not a mule deer.
Right. That makes sense. I think you could tell the difference between a sheep and a deer for sure.
Yes. I would hope so, but
Right. Yes.
I personally think you can tell the difference in a moose and an elk too. So
Right. That's funny. So if you're out and about, just back up a little bit before that. If you're coming in from outside the country, you have to first pull a tag, and then if you're granted that, then you have to figure out if it's a DIY or if it's going to be a guided hunt.
Right. And some people will get in touch. We have people that contact us. We want a deer hunt, and they apply ahead of time. We let them know what units to apply for. A lot of times we'll do this unit as a first choice and another unit as a second choice, so that you're kind of spreading your luck a little bit. Generally, where we are, it takes 2 years to draw your tag. But you also, another thing is, we have friends that have landowner vouchers. They have landowner tags, and I have people every year, they call late to try to book a hunt, and it's like, well, I'll get you in touch with this guy. He has vouchers, and maybe you can go with him. It generally costs a little bit to buy the voucher, and then you have to buy your hunting license on top of that. But that's another way, is to do those kind of hunts.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So once you get there and you're with your guide, what's the terrain like? Is it, and how do you find the buck? I understand you're looking at some tracks and things of that nature, but what are some of the different ways in which you're going to find the buck you want to hunt? Or does that even matter? Are you just looking for any old mule deer? It does matter, and it takes time. And if you're going with a guide, as I said, they probably know areas where there are deer. They've probably done their homework, and they know where there's a good deer, not just any deer. And what we do is we do a lot of horseback hunting. We kind of cover ground. Okay. But if we know there have been deer in a certain area, sometimes you're hunting sagebrush and bluffs. Sometimes you're hunting oak brush and mountains, pine trees, stuff like that. But generally, if we've seen deer in a certain area, we're going to go to that area, get on a high point where you're not skylined and glass. I highly recommend good optics for hunting out west. But just, look around, see if you can see them. As far as looking for their tracks and, well-traveled trails are really important. But big mule deer, they're really savvy, and they didn't get big by being dumb. Right. They generally aren't just roaming around in the middle of a plain field or something like that. But if you can learn how to glass and look for parts of deer, look for fur, look for tail, look for an antler that looks like a branch, or, a lot of times, there's a deer, but really it was a branch. It takes a lot of time of just looking and looking. And then once you've found a good deer that you want to pursue, that's when the stalk begins. And that's why we spot and stalk a lot out west. Sometimes that can mean a few yards. Sometimes that can be 1,000 yards. Wow. So that's why you have to be in shape. And we really play the wind. You've got to work with the wind, the same as elk hunting. Elk hunting depends a little differently as far as wind and what time of year and so forth. But with deer, if you can find one bedded down in the heat of the day, you can really make your move using brush or rolling hills or even arroyos or canyons, or I'm not sure what you call them out east. But if you use little draws to conceal yourself, you can walk a long ways standing up without having to crawl through sagebrush like an army, Gotcha. An army guy. Sure.
So you really look for other ways to get more close to the animal And this is for rifle hunting and similar for archery hunting, but archery hunting, obviously, it takes a lot more work to get close enough for an archery shot.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're using the terrain itself as cover, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're hunkering down, belly crawling through thick grass. You might just be using the actual natural topography of the land to stay below the horizon and move under that to get as close as you can.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
As far as the horseback hunting is concerned, how does that all work? Do you have a camp where you start out and you just go out for the day, or are you moving camps to another area on horseback and then coming back to a camp? How does that all get set up?
For us, on the days when we're doing horseback hunts, we usually start out, we have a bunkhouse, and we start out from there, and then we'll trailer to wherever the trailhead or the location. A lot of what we do is private land hunts, and if it's a huge ranch, we'll take the horses and trailer them out. Generally, the riding, it's, if you haven't ridden horses, it's sore. And there's really no way to get in shape for that. I have a couple guys that wear bicycle shorts to kind of pad their behinds so their butts aren't too sore. But
right. Do they tell anybody that, or they just?
Hunting camp, you talk about all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah.
It's all about gear, right? And that's their gear is, these bicycle shorts.
Okay. All right. So, makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. And, gear is another thing. Camo is always a big deal. And, with technology and all these different types of gear out, that's something, if you're going with an outfitter, they can give you a recommended list or give you a weather report. You really want to check the weather before you go and make sure you have appropriate gear, depending where in the state you're hunting. Like last November when I was hunting, in the mornings, it was like 19 degrees. And then in the evenings or afternoons, when it would warm up, it was almost 90. So you really had to, you had to layer, so you couldn't just, dress for fall weather or just, you really had to wear this variety, which is why a lot of people have layering systems.
Right. Wow. You really need a layering system to go from 19 degrees sub-freezing to 90 degrees, which is as tropical as any place in the country. Yeah. Wow. And even in September during archery season, the year before last, we're up archery hunting. You have your paper thin, like pajama type archery hunting pants. And then that evening we wake up to the wind and snow is blowing in the tent, and it's like, what happened? That's insane.
That's kind of Colorado. You always want to have a jacket.
Right. Wow. No kidding. That's nuts. I had no idea that the temperature and weather changed that fast.
It can. Wow. It can. Okay. Yeah.
As far as the spot and stalk, are you finding the mule deer by getting up on the ridges and from a high point? And are you walking to these spots? You taking the horses to these spots? Or is it a mixture of everything until you can finally put something together?
Sometimes it's a mixture. Sometimes you'll spot something from the horse. And usually when you want to get a better look at it, you need to get off your horse so you can have a stable rest and so forth. It's really hard to look through even your binoculars from a horseback because you're standing on something that's breathing. So every time it moves, your vision is obscured. So sometimes you see them while you're riding, and usually if we haven't seen what we're looking for, you tie up the horses, get off, have a morning, your Gatorade or your whatever wilderness athlete or whatever you want to drink. I don't know what everybody has different things they like on their hunts, but, take a break, get hydrated, and just look around. And usually you do that in the shade of a tree, kind of similar to turkey hunting or something. You don't want to be silhouetted. You don't want them to see you first. So really, it's amazing. You can watch some different hillsides or canyons and keep an eye out, and you'll be amazed at what moves through.
Wow.
And that's generally where, if you have an idea, there are big bucks in the area. If you wait, you will see them move through eventually. Or even, as I said, when you're looking for fur or body parts, you'll see a twitch of an ear, and then there's deer there. And sometimes it's just does, but other times it's, where there's does, there's generally bucks somewhere nearby.
Gotcha. Are there moments when you just sit tight and just watch and watch and watch until you see some kind of movement that you're interested in?
There are times, and a lot of it is instincts and feelings and so forth. I mean, if you know that there have been those deer in the area and you have an idea they're going to come feed out just before dark, that's a great time for them to feed out. Sometimes the does will come first and then the bucks come like after shooting light or something like that. But there are times, if you're looking and it's the end of the day, you haven't seen anything. If you'll just set up and wait, some people are afraid of dark because they don't know the hills or the mountains around here and they want to leave. But if you can wait till dark, just before dark is always a really good time to catch deer feeding out in the meadows.
It's funny how some people don't like dark. I love dark. I think dark's fun.
My daughter doesn't like dark. And I'm like, what are you afraid of? She's like, I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of what might be in the dark. So, I don't know.
I love the cloak of darkness to move around in the morning and then to escape at night, but with staying till the end because that's when they're going to move the most. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's such a tool if you use it right.
Yeah. And that's something, those meadows with a good grass in them, that is a great place. And not huge open meadows, but sometimes huge ones, but small meadows, if you can find those little pockets. And people ask me, where was that? I'm like, that was Mia's meadow. I'm not going to tell you exactly the pinpoint location, but if you can find those pockets where the deer feel safe and you just watch them, and even if it's not the buck you want to shoot, it's always just like amazing to watch them and watch how they interact, watch a buck push the doe around. And, it's really cool to finish your day with something like that.
So these 1,000-yard spot and stalks, how long does it take to get there? Or you don't know, you just have to take your time and be methodical?
A lot of times you don't know. It really depends. If you're hunting public land, on private land, I can tell you like which path or, how to get there fastest. But if you're hunting public land, sometimes you've got cliff faces that you're going to get cliffed out. So you're going to have to head up or down and to get around the cliffs or rivers. You should always bring waterproof hiking boots and good hiking boots, but you never know when you're going to have to cross a creek or a river and to get closer. So it really varies. Obviously you want to cut the distance as quickly as possible, but once you get relatively close, you don't want to move too rapidly as to startle something. And that's something, I think a lot of people have a hard time with is patience. And really a good stalk, you can creep up. It could take an hour to move 100 yards, and if you can figure out how to stalk, maybe take your shoes off and walk in your socks. There's a lot of ways to get close to the deer when they're bedded down in the middle of the day. And obviously you don't want to shoot while they're bedded down. I know there are people who do, but if you can be patient and wait, you'll have a lot better shot. And, it's a lot better to shoot them when you can wait until they stand up.
Okay. All right. Very fascinating. And so gear-wise, it sounds like it's a lot of layering with the right type of clothing, some wicking, some warming, some outer layers, and being willing to peel those away as you need to.
Yeah. I actually was just I'm doing a review on the women's Sitka, and that polygene fabric, the material, the element in the fabric of the shirt that I have is amazing. The moisture wicking is just awesome. I've always been a proponent of wool and merino wool because you don't get cold if you get wet or sweaty. Right. You've been hiking, you hike all day and then you're waiting for the sun to go down, you're waiting until dark and then you get chilled. With that new moisture wicking fabric, you don't have to worry about that as much. You still want to layer because you want to, keep your body heat in, but you don't have to worry about that dampness making you get shivered and get hypothermic, you know?
Right. Fascinating. And it sounds like appropriate footwear is key too.
And that is key no matter what. Whether you're hunting deer or turkeys or bird hunting, I think anywhere you go, you always have to take care of your feet. I've had friends that were in the military, and that was one of their things was whatever you do, take care of your feet. And even hunting, if you get blisters on the first day of your hunt, while you have prepared all year getting in shape, and if you started at the beginning of the summer, get your boots and get your boots in shape too. It's really, I've seen pictures on the internet of gruesome blisters from people, and it's really a bummer if you do that on the first day of your hunt, because then you're not really going to be able to go and locate animals. You kind of have to take your chances and wait for them to come to you.
Right. It's almost like you want to get those boots way in advance, get them worked in, hike in them a lot until they're comfortable and if they're going to give you a blister or not. Yeah.
And I recommend a good lug, on the sole, because you you can be climbing. They call it the Rocky Mountains for a reason. You know, if you're on rocks and your boots are slipping and sliding, it really makes it rough on you, and you can, you know, turn an ankle, and you just really want to have a good shoe, good support, and as you said, get that boot broken in before you come for your hunt.
Gotcha. How much do thermals and wind direction play into your approach?
They play a lot. Okay. And I mean, you always need windicator. If you don't have windicator, you can use the dust, you know, different things like that. Use the seeds from a flower or something to see which way the wind is going. The thing in Colorado is if you're hunting in the mountains, the wind swirls a lot. So you really have to pay attention. If the wind, you know, if the wind is swirling, which way is it turning and which way are you going to come in? And that may play effect as how quickly you can get to an animal as well, because your direct approach might be directly upwind from them and it's blowing your scent straight at them. And I've had people tell me about different ozonics and different systems that are supposed to keep your scent down. And I do believe in keeping your scent down, but as we just said, if you're sweating, your scent is still going to come out, and eventually, and they have really amazing noses and they can smell you, and you'll know immediately when all of a sudden, you know, they I'm sure it's the same with whitetail. I've actually, on a couple of my whitetail hunts, I've seen like all of a sudden they got your scent and they're gone. Right.
I can see how some of those scent elimination or containment type systems might work if you're not moving.
Right.
But when you start moving, you start sweating, you start smelling. So it's if you are hunting in any capacity where there's a lot of movement that needs to occur, I'm not sure that these scent elimination systems are going to help you much.
Yeah. And basically what I do is I don't use, you know, you use scent-free fabric softeners, scent-free laundry, and that kind of deal more than using a system to stop it. And if I know that I've been in somebody's vehicle, I know I've ridden in other people's vehicles, they're smokers, and you get out and you know you smell like smoke, then you use that scent-free spray and get sprayed down, you know, and get rid of as much of the scent as you can, but you're not going to completely 100% eliminate your scent.
Right. And I've even heard as recently as yesterday on another interview how they use the campfire smoke to smoke their clothes, basically, so that when they do approach the animal, they smell like something that deer most likely has smelled before, and smoke isn't a danger smell. Right.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. When I hunted in Russia, the hunting guide there, and it's something that I've done dirt, but he took pine boughs and he scraped all the clothing with the pine boughs.
Yep.
To give it a natural scent. You can also get the scent wafers that pin to your clothing or your hat to give like a cedar smell or a pine smell.
Right.
During elk hunting, some people get like urine scent. I don't recommend it. You don't have to do that.
Right.
It's not.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that's because I think that smell is not disgusting. I mean, a Redding bull is a good smell, but the ester smell now, not so much.
Right. Oh, I can't imagine. I mean, I know what the deer smells like, but we've never had to deal with elk smell. So it sounds, I mean, and this is the theme over and over. First, play the wind. And then if you can't play the wind, you better have a really good way to eliminate your smell, either through, you know, ozone or activated carbon, or combination of both, or some other technique to blend into the background of the smells, whether it's grasses or pines or smoke or whatever.
Right.
You got to have something if you're going to get close and that wind shifts at the last second.
Right. And if you're rifle hunting, you can sometimes play the distance if you have practiced with your rifle.
Right.
And if you're hunting on your own or with a guide, always sight your rifle in when you get to your hunting location. I've had people, you know, I sighted in and I drove myself, and then you get here and it's for some reason the sights are off. Mm-hmm. And it can have to do with the elevation. It could have to do with getting bumped. There's various things that affect it. So you'd always test your rifle before you go and hunt, and get good optics on your rifle. I have some rifles that the optics cost, you know, quadruple what the rifle itself costs, because you want to make sure you can see what you're shooting. And I think that's really, really important.
Huge. Absolutely huge. Excellent. That was a fun journey about how to go mule deer hunting in Colorado. That was an eye-opening experience for somebody that's never done it, and just, you know, trying to piece it together in a detailed fashion. That's very cool. So, Mia, let's talk about your podcasting a little bit and your blog. It looks like you're very active in your podcast, Mac Outdoors with Mia and Leah. And you've also got, looks like, I think you've been on some other podcasts as well, but your website, it looks like you write a lot and that you're part of the Outdoor Podcast Writers Association. And could you talk to me a little bit about the podcast, how it came about, and what your goal is there?
Yeah, I've been on several podcasts, and a friend of mine recommended me and my daughter creating a podcast because we used to share our stories and stuff like that. And she actually just graduated high school. She's headed off to college soon, and she'll be away, but we wanted to still communicate. And so we figured she's going to be telling stories. I'll have stories to tell, and we'll share that with everybody on the podcast. There's a lot of people who have followed her since she was a little kid, and they've watched her grow and watched her abilities, grow and stuff like that. And they really want to follow her. So that's how that came about. And we share hunting, shooting, and other outdoor tips and events.
Excellent.
Yeah. And then I am a contributor at Armed Lutheran Radio. That's another podcast. And I just do like a 5-minute segment, and I do shooting tips, tips for women. I do a variety of things there. It's called Mia's Motivations, like my website. And Lloyd is the host, and he says, whatever motivates Mia is what she's going to talk about. So it depends on, sometimes it's like what's on the news or where I traveled or, something like that. So that's what I do over there. And then, as you said, I've been interviewed on quite a few podcasts. And actually, I don't think I have them all up to date on my website. I probably need to add a few from this past winter on there. But yeah, I've been a guest several times. I'm also occasionally a guest host on Remington Country television. I fill in when the regular host, if one can't make it, I've filled in a few times. And as you said, I have my personal blog, which is kind of how I got into the outdoor industry itself. Is I used to share stories with some of our hunters, and mainly with my grandpa via my blog. But I write for Beretta. I've done some freelance stuff for Remington, for NRA. I write for Western Whitetail magazine, and that's something we're talking mule deer hunting. But a lot of people are like, Western Whitetail, what's that? Well, it's like coos deer, stuff like that. So I don't specifically write about coos deer. I write a lot of reviews about women's gear and other hunting tips, like what we were talking about today, hunting mule deer and stuff. So there's that.
The West is so fascinating when it comes to animals. It's just so well populated and stoked. It's just, you think about, I've got the whitetail, I've got the mule deer, I've got the elk, I've got the coos deer, I've got blacktail. It's insane. Yeah. It's such a paradise for an outdoors person.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, I always say that I could probably be happy living anywhere, but I feel really blessed to live where we do. And as I said, we live so close to New Mexico, and I told you I buy all these hunting licenses. Well, I buy New Mexico licenses as well, because from my front porch, 5 miles away, or not even 5 miles, maybe it's 3, is New Mexico. So I do a lot of hunting down there as well.
That's excellent.
I
envy you. In some ways, it's a fascinating life. I love my life here too. Don't get me wrong, but it's just, I wish I could have it all, and I can't.
Oh yeah, don't we?
It's funny. I do love your positive attitude, though. I mean, your motivation on your website, encouraging others to get outside, hunt, fish, shoot, cook, eat, survive, create, and live in a positive way. That is just incredibly encouraging.
Well, I hope so. I mean, that's my goal. Like I told you earlier, when I was in high school and college in California, and it was like, I need to encourage these people, because not everybody wants to be behind a gun pulling the trigger. Not everybody wants to know like how to process game and stuff like that. But you can still get outside, go sit by the lake. There's so many things. And so that's really what I try to do. And why I say in a positive way is because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I had a guy that came to hunting camp, the moon's too bright. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, really? You're in the Rocky Mountains in this gorgeous place, and that's all you could say is the moon's too bright. So I really try to put a positive attitude out there. I kind of feel like if you're complaining, nobody wants to listen to you anyways.
Nobody likes a complainer. They really don't.
Yeah. I mean, ask for help. That's one thing, but to just complain there's no reason to do that. And I talked about being healthy and, staying fit. Well, if you complain, it really stresses you out. And that's how cancer is caused. And everybody hates cancer. I know I do, but it's like,
right.
there's all these things that really can help our overall health. And one of them is living positive, eating healthy food. And really just I catch myself as a writer, I get stuck behind the computer a lot. Mm-hmm. And, it's like I have to set timers and make myself go outside, get away from it. I'm fortunate to live on some acreage, and I'll go hike the hills, on our property behind my house, just to get away from that and decompress. And it relaxes you. Mm-hmm. It gets your thoughts, for a writer, it gets your thoughts back, in place where you can go back and, pick up that story that you couldn't make sense of, and you can get it written.
Right. And I feel your pain. I sit in front of a computer a lot to do podcasting and create our different podcast projects we have going on. And I can feel it in my legs. Like when I start to feel my legs starting to get a little tight, it's time to move. Mm-hmm. It's time to get out in the outside. But usually by that time, my brain's a little fried, and it's time to go do something else anyway.
Yeah, and people were meant to be outside, and
right.
It really, like, your muscle strength, your abdomen, if you just walking will develop that. And I know a lot of people like, oh, I have all this back pain. Well, it's because you sit at a desk all day. You need to go out and walk or go to the gym. I mean, a lot of people don't have places to go, and it's like you can find places if you really want to, if you look hard. I actually interviewed Christy Titus a year ago or 2 years ago for something, and we were talking about, she lived in LA, in Anaheim, mm-hmm. and she found places to go. And, I lived in San Diego. There were lakes, there were hills, there were different places with paths that you were in the outdoors, and you could, go and find ways to exercise. So there's really not the excuse other than, I've got to get my work done. Well, you know what? Set a timer, go out for 15 minutes. Labor laws say you should take a break, so do it.
Right. Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's a reason for that. And I found that one of the things that I have adopted this past year was an emphasis on coyote hunting. Mm. And the coyote hunting, it wasn't, the goal is to kill some of the coyotes to help the population of some of our other game. But in reality, it's really it's the biggest excuse for me to get outside and hunt and get exercise and breathe the fresh air and get into the woods. And
you get me excited just saying that, because actually the night before last, my husband and I went out back in the back pasture. We've had a lot of coyotes, and we actually do coyote mitigation for some of the ranches. Mm-hmm. But we went out back, and the end of summer, July, August in Southwest Colorado is like, they call it monsoon season, and we get these afternoon thunderheads and showers. And so it didn't rain the other day, and we went out back, and the clouds in the sky were just spectacular. Right. And, we were out there, hunting coyotes, but really, like, it was just like, wow, it's so beautiful. And we're just in our back field, Right. And it's, you have so much air out there, and, eventually a coyote came, and, but the whole evening, even if a coyote wouldn't have come, it's like, it was just beautiful. And like you're saying, hunting coyotes gets you off the chair and out doing something.
It does.
We also have prairie dogs, and prairie dogs are fun to hang out and do target practice. And like you were talking about as a kid with that first rifle, shooting the long range, well, you can kind of learn windage and learn thermals. And that's a great way with like a new hunter to teach them that kind of stuff, is shooting at prairie dogs and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. And this coyote thing, you can hunt them all year round. So that that fun never has to stop. And I have to tell you, it gave me like an excitement for the end of my day. Like, I know that at 4:00, I'm shutting all this down and I get to go have fun. And I so look forward to that all winter long, and in the deep snow too. We're dressing up in deep woolen clothing and hiking out in the middle of the forest and 1.5 foot of snow to set up for 20 minutes some kind of coyote set and call. And I look forward to that whole event every single day, because I knew I could do it every single day. And now it's the summertime and I'm still doing it. And I'm not enjoying it as much in the summer because I don't really like the bugs, but I didn't mind really. Walking in deep snow is probably some of the best exercise you can get. It's tough.
Oh my gosh, yes. And actually, you're talking about getting in shape for hunting out west. If you have ever hunted mountain lions, that has got to be the hardest hunt to do out west. This last year, I got a mountain lion, and we were hiking through waist deep snow. And yeah, get in shape. If you're ever going to mountain lion hunt, they are predators that decimate our deer populations and elk, and they have to be managed as well. So, you can hunt lions too, and that is a hunt that will test your endurance for sure.
Right. And the coyote thing is just such a savior, because you always think of deer season, and it's a season. A season has to end. But there's this coyote thing. Your hunt never ends. You can go every single day.
A lot of people, you have your favorite thing to hunt, which I do love hunting mule deer. I love hunting elk. I love hunting turkey. But a lot of people ask, what are you going to do when season's done? But really in Colorado, the season doesn't have to be over. As I said, right now we were just hunting coyotes, and year round you hunt them, and prairie dogs. But we'll go into antelope, then elk, bear, deer, waterfowl, mountain lion, then you go into turkey, and then it never ends in Colorado. It's a lot of people are like, oh, I'm so sad hunting season's over, and it's like, no, it's still going. You can still go practice.
It's such a mindset, because now you're like, it's okay, it's over, it's okay, or that
okay.
that one season's over, but I've got a whole bunch of other things I've got planned, and it's just an endless excitement, there's never a dull moment. It's just the best thing. And I don't know why I've never done this since I started doing it about a year and a half ago. Why haven't I been doing this my whole life? I don't have to stop hunting any time during the year. I just have to hunt for different things.
Exactly. And it's really cool to hunt different animals, because it helps you learn and discover. It gets you out of your box, out of your rut. Like, there's not just one way to hunt. And I know a lot of us, me included, it's like, oh, well, this is what you do. But if you go hunt other animals, you learn different tactics, and it'll help you on another hunt. And that's partly, I travel the country, and I've been to New Zealand, Finland, Russia. I've been other places hunting, and you learn different things. And I actually had a friend of mine long ago was asking, why would you go hunt with an outfitter when you're already a guide? And it's like, well, because as I mentioned before, you don't have time to go scout, and I'm going to learn from that outfitter, so you can really learn a lot if you can afford to pay the outfitter,
Right.
But that's why you book hunts with hunting guides, is so hopefully they'll teach you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I have to ask you a question. I know
Absolutely,
you're interviewing me.
Sure.
But it's funny to be talking about coyote hunting, as I said, because we were just out hunting the night before last. I put this on Twitter the other day. What is your go-to coyote gun? And a lot of people told me it's whatever I have with me, and that's because they're hunting deer and they see a coyote, they shoot the coyote. But when you're actually going out coyote hunting, like you're saying you do also, what is your go-to coyote gun?
I think if I had my choice, and I'm not big into just going out and getting the equipment to have the equipment. I think of the equipment as a tool. And at the moment, my go-to gun, and it's way more than I need, but it's also my deer gun or my bear gun or my moose gun. I have a 30-06, and it's a very versatile firearm. It's something I'm very used to and comfortable with. Ideally, I'd like to go to maybe a 17 or maybe a smaller caliber of some sort, a more flat, long-range gun. But right now, it's my 30-06 because that's what I have. That's the one. Yeah. That's what I'm using.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people do. You've got your hunting rifle, and I always just like to people who actually do coyote hunt and not just hunt, shoot them incidentally. I like to see what they're using. So a 30-06 is such an all-around caliber that it's great for everything.
It is. And someday I'll break away. And again, this whole coyote thing is more or less something new. I never really thought that, hey, I'm going to go buy a special gun just for that. But it's getting to that point where I think it might be time to get something a little lighter. 30-06 is an older gun. It's a little heavier. We're hoofing it quite far. And there are a couple of guns now. Since I've done this podcast, learning what other hunters do in my particular neck of the woods, or what some of the really talented coyote hunters use for long-range stuff, there are guns that are on my list now that never once were. But until then, it's my trusty old 30-06.
Nice. I have to kind of giggle listening to you because when my husband met me, he didn't really realize, a lot of men are like, oh, I wish I could find a girl that liked to hunt and shoot and blah, blah, blah. But I think I have more guns than I have shoes.
Right.
And I guess I don't know if I'm a collector or a hoarder. Like, oh, there's this one. I got to try that. Oh, there's that one. I got to try.
Right. No, I'd love guns. I wish that I wish that I could have a higher budget so I could go spend more, and I'm still trying to figure out how I can get more guns into the household through the podcast, and I haven't actually explored it much, but someday we'll have a firearm sponsor. Maybe I'll get a couple of my favorites.
There you go. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So I have plenty of weapons. There's plenty to go around, so I just picked the most convenient at that time. What does MAC stand for?
That actually was my LLC, and it came about. I had another friend that asked me what's MAC, and it's just kind of an acronym, and really it's not an acronym. It was symbolized for MiaAnstine.com, and I always say it's Mia and Company.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I needed a name for my LLC, and I'm not good at names. That's why on social media, like people's like, "What's your handle for Twitter?" or "What's your handle?" and it's Mia Anstine, because I'm not creative with stuff like that.
It's Mia. It's just that. It's my name.
I'm Mia.
Right. That makes sense. It makes total sense. Very funny. So I asked you to think about a memorable deer hunt. We kind of talked about one a little earlier. I don't know if that's the one that is your most memorable. Is there another one on top of that comes to mind?
There is one, a deer hunt. I had my eye on a buck. I haven't shot a really big, grandiose buck yet, but I had my eye on a buck. Someday I'm going to get a monster, but I need to practice more patience.
Okay. We all do.
If you're patient. Yeah. But I was after this really huge buck, and it came down to the very last day, and we were waiting in a meadow, like I was referring to, waiting and hoping he would feed out. And I've had a lot of last minute hunts where, like I said, a lot of people, they won't wait till dark. They won't hunt the last day of season. They'll leave early. They don't schedule their work properly and stuff like that. But if you can wait till the end, I had one hunt, some friends were hunting with us. There were 4 of us total. 3 of them left early because there was nothing, there's nothing. And so they left, and I'm like, no, you got to keep hunting. And we couldn't find this buck. We couldn't find him. And the very last day, and it was like 10 minutes before shooting light. And I really keep an eye on shooting light because I try to be legal. Since I do help teach hunter ed, you've got to be legal.
Right.
But it's amazing to have a deer come out and a good buck, really great. But actually, I'm thinking of a lot of other stories as I'm telling you this one.
Oh boy.
Sagebrush bucks are pretty cool too, because you don't know they're there. But this buck, he came out, and 2 does came out, and they fed out, and we were like, oh great, and we're ready to go. I had one of my friends with me, and she doesn't hunt, but she wanted to come. She's like, and she brought her son. And at the time he was, I think, 4 or 5 years old. And he's like, I want to see you shoot a deer. And he's so excited because, he wanted to see a mom shoot a deer because, moms don't hunt because his mom didn't hunt. So that's something that I thought was really cool and interesting because in our area, actually almost all the women hunt, or have hunted. And so there was all this pressure, like, oh my gosh, what if we don't see one? Is this little guy going to be disappointed? I guess he would learn about hunting that you don't always fill a tag. But just at the last minute, this deer comes out, a great buck, a shooter buck, one that you would shoot on the first day or the last day. And all of a sudden, I don't know if he winded us, but he took off running and bolted. And sometimes you can grunt or woof or something and get a deer to stop, or sometimes it makes him run faster. And so this little kid, he does that. He says, "Arr!" And I was like, oh my God, and I had my sights ready, and the buck stopped broadside, and he looked, and I shot and dropped him. And it was like, the little boy was so happy.
Oh, wow. I bet he was. That's awesome.
Such a big deal to that kid. So that was a cool one. And as I said, I'm thinking of a lot of other ones as I'm telling you that.
Gotcha. Well, we can schedule a part 2 at some point. That's excellent. Well, thank you for that. I have 10 rapid fire questions for you if you're ready. I didn't prep you for these, and they're kind of fun. So let's go down.
I hope so.
Okay. All right. Mia, what's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Be in shape for the hunt.
That's a good one. And that's more than just physical, I would imagine.
Yep. As I said, last year it was mental for me.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah.
We all have these things that we love to hunt with. It's usually an object, or maybe it's an actual device that makes our hunt better. Other than your firearm, what's that one thing for you that drives you crazy if you leave it at home or in the truck?
My Swarovski optics.
That's a good one. That's a very important one.
Oh, yeah. I actually had a hunt. A lady didn't want to come with me on a guided hunt because, I guess she was being sexist instead of men being sexist. So she went with another one of our guides, and I brought the pack horses along, and I said, I'll wait down, at the bottom. And if you need me, come get me and I'll come pack out an elk. And the first morning at sunrise, I'm waiting, and the guide forgot his binoculars.
Oh, wow.
And she saw that I had good binos because she had swirls also. And so she's like, this afternoon, can I hunt with you? So, it's like, she knew optics are important.
That's right. They're hugely important, especially where you are. My goodness. Yeah, I've
never leave home without your Swarovskis.
I've seen. I don't need binoculars necessarily where I hunt. The way I hunt, they're extremely useful. But putting your eyes up against a Swarovski, it's uncanny how clear they are. I've never seen anything like it. Blows my mind. Absolutely. And I can see how important that would be hunting out west where there's long distances that you need to cover and you need to see crisply every little detail that you can get your eye on.
Yeah. And watching animals come out before shooting light, you can see in low light and stuff like that. They're great.
The low light stuff was phenomenal too.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Back to the 10 rapid fire questions.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's totally cool. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
My biggest pet peeve in life. I'd have to say drama. People that are negative and like drama. It's a really big pet peeve of mine.
Right.
Yeah.
Good one. Very good one. Okay. How old are you today, Mia?
I'm 44 today.
44. Okay.
Yep.
What would you tell the 22-year-old Mia, knowing what you know today?
What would I tell me? Ooh, this is a tough one.
It's a good one. It's very reflective.
It's a good one. I would tell me to help as many people as I can, encourage as many people as I can, and support people. I would tell me not to focus on myself, put that focus outward. And if you help others, it'll lift you up.
Very cool. Very nice. You meet a stranger at a hunting convention somewhere in the world. They strike up a conversation and they ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
It depends which kind of convention it is, a hunting convention. I usually tell people that I'm an outdoor writer, and then it leads conversation from there.
Okay. Very nice. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
What did I have for breakfast? That was so long ago.
It was a while ago.
Yeah. For breakfast, I usually, my breakfast usually isn't till mid-morning, but I usually start my day with coffee. Then shortly after that, I have kombucha. Then I usually have something like a hard-boiled egg, avocado, or nuts, stuff like that. It's kind of how my morning went today. So I don't know if that's really breakfast or just grazing.
Gotcha. It sounds like grazing, but I'll give you that. Coffee is one of my favorites. Now, kombucha. Mm-hmm. I can identify, and my brain said I know what all these other things are. What's kombucha?
You're like, what is that?
Yes.
It actually is. I'll have to send you a link to it, or you'll have to link in the show notes. But it is a probiotic type of drink. I really like some with chia seeds in there. It cleanses your system. It realigns the alkaline in your system. And I partly do that to, like I said, to cleanse. I've actually had incidences where, my father died of cancer, my grandmother died of cancer, and I've had scares over the years. And it's said to help prevent cancer. So right. I really try to eat healthy. And that's why I keep repeating, be healthy every day, because you really have to be healthy to live as long as you can and go help other people.
Gotcha. And I understand there seems to be a whole new diet wave, and I don't think it's a fad this time. I think there's actually some potency to it.
And me personally, I mentioned Wilderness Athlete, and I have to tell you, all the products I've mentioned today, I'm not sponsored by anybody. So none of these are because somebody told me to say something good. I get leg aches really bad, and it's not a cramp. It's just an aching pain, like growing pains. And Wilderness Athlete, they sent me some stuff, and their Hydrate, and I used that when I went to New Zealand, and I was really worried about hiking the mountains in New Zealand, and I trained for that, like I trained here, and that stuff kept me from getting the leg aches as much. But actually the kombucha, now that I've been doing that for about 6 months, it's also helping prevent those aches, and those aches are like so severe, nothing would make them go away. I mean, drinking water wouldn't make them go away. Activity helps, but if you sit around all day, I get these aches that are just like take your breath away. So
Gotcha.
I try to eat, if I eat a lot of sugar and all this stuff that, like you said, it's kind of a trend right now, but I've noticed if you eat a lot of junk food, Mia, you are going to not be able to move in the evening.
Right.
So it's really important for me.
I've noticed, and I've experimented a little bit with the ketone diets, which apparently if you keep low sugars, your cells can now use ketones. And ketones apparently is a fantastic fuel for your cells. And cancer cells completely struggle on ketones. Like they can't fuel it. They love sugar, but they can't ride on ketones.
Right.
So it's apoptosis, basically. Cancer cells just die because they can't get any more fuel. So it's a fascinating subject. The other thing I'm into these days is chaga. You tried chaga?
I have not tried that yet.
It's this funky stuff that grows in the Northeast on birch trees. And it's do me a favor and Google chaga and read about all the studies that were done in Russia about it. It's fascinating. There's more antioxidants in this chaga mushroom than any other component on the planet, apparently. And has remedies for all kinds of things. But
nice.
Apparently the Russians were keeping it locked tight in their...
a big secret.
Yes, and they didn't tell anybody. But it turns out it grows in my backyard. But it doesn't grow all over the world. It's only in colder climates on white birch trees.
Okay.
Or some other trees, but mostly birch. Fascinating stuff, though.
Yeah, it is.
Now what I do when I'm out hunting and I find a piece, I mark it on my GPS to go get it at a later time after the hunt's over, and I actually go harvest this chaga, then you grind it up, and it's actually pretty yummy tea.
See, it's amazing the things you can find in the outdoors, right?
It's crazy. Yeah, maybe the cure to cancer is in this chaga, and it's sitting right here. And I found it on a hunt. Just crazy. I don't know. All right, so back to the 10 rapid fire questions again.
These aren't very rapid.
No, these are not rapid at all. This is the slowest.
I better start saying yes or no.
This is the slowest rapid fire session we've ever had. Okay, yeah, you get your own billboard on the side of a highway. It's a blank canvas. You put anything on it that you want. What would it say?
Get outside.
Love it. Excellent. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Oh, I don't know. You stumped me. That's not a yes or no question.
It's not. What, did anybody pop into your head?
No, really.
Okay.
Nobody popped in my mind.
Okay.
Successful. I'm going to struggle with this one.
Okay. We'll move on to the next one.
I don't know.
Okay. No problem. All right. What's a typical day in your life look like? Sunrise to sunset.
Sunrise to sunset when I'm not out hunting.
Yes.
Because hunting, we know what we do.
Yes.
I wake up a couple hours before sunrise, and people laugh at me because I wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning without my alarm. But I wake up, I dance and go to feed my dogs, and then we make coffee. I have coffee. Then I have midday grazing. I head out mid-morning and feed our animals. We've got horses, ducks, geese, and emu, pheasants, and all kinds of animals, turkeys. Feed, and then depending on the day, I might go mow weeds or help with irrigation or repair fence, do a lot of different things.
Gotcha. All right. And then finally, the last question? We finally reached the end here, Mia, which is crazy because we went on tangents and I love it. What is a typical deer hunting day in your life like?
A typical deer hunting day. Usually you're waking up about 4 in the morning, heading out to actually hunt maybe an hour before sunrise. It does depend on where I'm hunting. And if I'm hunting with horses, then I need to wake up earlier to saddle. But a deer hunting day head out. I always take snacks. As I said, nutrition is important. I pack snacks before we leave, and then I spend a lot of time either riding my horse or hiking, and as I said, glassing, looking around, looking for deer. And that's always until after dark, until the end of the day.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right. Those are the 10 rapid fire questions. Thank you for completing that exercise. You did very well.
Wait, ended with the sunset.
Ended with the sunset. That's perfect. So where can we find more about you after we've listened to this show as a listener? Where can we go type into and connect into the interwebs to find more about you?
Well, if you Google Mia Anstine, you will find a lot of my stuff. My website is kind of a hub for all my works, and that's miaanstine.com. And I have links there to articles and interviews and podcasts. I have a YouTube channel. It's me. Everything, as I said, is Mia Anstine. But if you look me up, you can find me on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. You can find me all over the place. And as I said, it's just MiaAnstine.
Excellent. Very, very good. Man, this has been fantastic. This time flew, and I've had a really good time talking to you, and I love your positive energy, and I love that you're a hardcore hunter, and I don't care if you have a larger collection of firearms than you do of shoes. I think that's awesome.
Well, we didn't talk about all the gear I have either, but that's a different story.
Right. We may have, and I'm serious, in order to cover all the rest of the content, we'll have to have a round 2.
We'll do that. We'll do that after I finish my book. Okay. I'll let you know.
Thank you to Mia Anstine for joining us on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. Certainly sounds like she is completely in love with what she's doing out there. Sounds like a paradise for any hunter, and there's certainly plenty of species to hunt, and hunting all year round in the big country, getting on horseback, and it just sounds like my cup of tea, and someday I'll get out there. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week?
I do, Jay. I always try to have something in my sleeve, up my sleeve for this.
I know you do, so I test you every week, but you always come up with something good, so lay it on me. The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
You know, Jay, that time of year when we hit to the tree stand, and a lot of guys don't like to share their location or where they're going or what they're doing, but there's always that thought in the back of my mind, what if something happens? What if the unthinkable happens while you're in your tree stand or in the ground blind way back in the woods? What if? It always crosses my mind, and if it doesn't cross you as the listener, as one of our hunting friends, it should. Accidents happen, and nobody's perfect. I've been hunting a long time, but I'll be telling you that I'm not perfect in the woods. My mind's thinking hunting, and safety is definitely a priority, but it's furthest from my mind to have an accident. So keep that in mind, and where I'm leading up to this is make sure that somebody knows where you're at. There's a lot of remote locations that you got tree stands hung. And you think to yourself, how many people actually know where that tree stand is if something happens? And if nobody knows where that tree stand's at, that could be your difference between life and death. That extra 30 minutes they got to take to look for you after a freak accident has happened could change your life of making it or not. So either draw yourself maps to give to your spouses or your best friend, somebody you can trust. Just let somebody know where you're hunting at. You ain't got to go into detail, but at least get them in that general direction in the area where your tree stands are. That way, if the unthinkable happens, somebody can get to you. That's Chubby Tines tip of the week.
Love it. Sometimes we overlook that stuff, but it's so important to stay safe and have a plan before you even step foot into the woods, and let your loved ones know where you're going to be. Give them a map. I know you don't want to share that with all your buddies sometimes, but at least let your loved ones know exactly where to find you, just in case something goes wrong. So, and give them a time that you're coming back. That's a big one. Well, that's great, man. Thanks for that tip of the week. That was fantastic. Thank you to Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines tip of the week. I'd also like to say thank you to all of our sponsors. Without them, this show is not possible. And specifically, I'd like to say thank you to Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, Covert Scouting Cameras, the Horny Buck Seed Company, And once again, Morse's Sporting Goods. I truly believe in each and every product that we're advertising on this show. We've tried them all. We've been to the stores. Each and every one are absolutely high quality, high grade products. And if you're shopping for any one of these types of items, please give our sponsors a shot first. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and Blueberry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registries Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.